Hi, everyone. My name is Raman Kalyan. I'm on the Microsoft 365 product marketing team, and I'm joined here with Tala Mir. Tala,
Yeah. Hey, super excited to be here, back at it again with another Ignite. I got
that's
some
right.
super exciting things to talk about. So yeah,
So Tala and I have been working together on this endeavor around insider risk for the past 2 years, and today we're excited to speak to you about, not getting caught off guard by the hidden dangers of insider risk within your organization, and how do you protect your sensitive data with insider risk management. So let's go ahead and get into it, Tala.
let's
One
do
of
it.
the things that we recently found in a survey that we did with a large number of CISOs was that 93% of them are still concerned about insider risk. Not only that, but 66% stated that they're very concerned. Tala, this continues to be a problem.
It continues to be a problem. Not only that, but I think it's actually become a bigger problem with the whole COVID situation and work from home. You've got data being made available to all these other endpoints outside of your organizational boundaries. How do you protect against that? How do you get visibility against that? So I think this is becoming a more and more sort of a pronounced problem. So I'm not surprised with the kind of survey results that we're seeing.
The other thing that we heard from them was that they're using a multitude of different applications today. As we think about it, it's really kind of a fractured approach for insider risk.
That's right. And particularly when it comes to DLP, I mean, something that we'll dig into a bit more, but the whole idea that it's a very transactional approach to doing something that requires you to build these correlated sort of viewpoints into what's going on. So it's a very limited way to kind of manage insider risk.
One last thing I want to really sort of highlight here is that all of these different solutions require you to deploy end user agents to capture those signals. And one of the cool things about insider risk management for Microsoft is that we don't have that challenge.
That's right. And it actually comes in very importantly because there's three different dimensions that get impacted because of it. So number one, there's just the management overhead. Now I've got this agent, I need to manage it across my enterprise, keep it updated, all that stuff. The second is security impact. So the minute you deploy these new agents on the endpoint, you're potentially increasing the attack surface on that endpoint. So how do we make sure that we don't necessarily increase the attack surface with them? And third, perhaps the most evident, is the fact that these agents will now have potentially productivity impact for your end users, right? The folks that are trying to use the systems to get the work done, that's your number one priority. But if these agents get in the way, they can eat up memory, they can eat up utilization. So the fact that with our solution, it's really built in to Windows 10. So the idea that you don't have to worry about the management overhead or the potential increase in attack surface from a security point of view, or the productivity impact, that's a huge, huge plus.
Yeah, huge plus, man. And so insider risk management, this product's been out for a year and a half now, tons of great momentum, a lot of Microsoft 365 customers using it. I think the three things that really stand out, the things that I've heard from customers is that, rich insights, being able to really identify those customizable or those patterns with templates, the easy to get started templates. And we'll get into that a little bit here, but more importantly, privacy built in, pseudo-anonymization on by default, strong role-based access controls, really having that ability to audit what's happening, and such that you're really protecting the end user privacy, supporting your culture while also identifying the risks that are most important to you. And then finally, the ability to collaborate across your organization. I can't even stress enough how important it is to that this isn't just a security problem. And the last thing before we get into a demo, I really wanted to kind of focus in on was, the when I speak to customers, I think when we both speak to customers, one of the first things they talk about is, well, I've got DLP, I've got data loss prevention. So why can't I just continue using that to identify insider risks? And I'd love for you to kind of, talk about the contrast between insider risk and data loss prevention, and what are the different values and benefits you get.
Yeah. So for the very first thing I like to talk about there is this is stuff that we get educated on from our customers is when you look at the NIST cybersecurity framework, for example, you're talking about the ability to identify, protect, detect, and respond to risks, right? When you look at things like DLP, it's really focused on identification and really protection of your content transactional risks. And
Right.
that piece is really important, right? So you're focused on what kind of content you want to focus in on and what kind of transactions you want to either block or block with override options. So maybe I don't want somebody to print documents, or I don't want somebody to download documents or upload documents. When it comes to insider risk, the pivot is very different. It's not about the content, it's about the user. So you have to kind of elevate that a little bit. And secondly, it's really important to not just look at transactions, but look at correlation of activities. That's the most important things, right? And I'm super excited to talk about some of the things that we have coming, things like sequencing and the cumulative anomaly detection in this space to really highlight that fact. But when you look at human beings and what they're doing, they're not just conducting a transaction. It's a series of transactions that help you identify the sort of the behavior behind it and understand the intent of what the user is doing. So we're really focused in on how do you detect insider risk and then respond to it, the later parts of it. That's how we look at the key differences.
Now, I'd love to actually bring on a surprise guest. So in today's session, we actually have Greg Peterson from Avanade, a customer of ours who's been working with us for a while now at Tala, right? I think he's in our design partner program.
Hey, thanks, Raman and Tala. I really appreciate it. So my name is Greg Peterson. I work for Avanade, and I'm a security technology and operations manager.
Awesome, Greg. Thank you for being on this session. So now, how long have you been working with Tala on this product?
That's a great question. I think with Tala, we've been working together for about a year at this point.
Awesome, awesome. And in your capacity at Avanade, like what is your core focus?
My core focus at Avanade is running our security technologies, so identifying and deploying the new security technologies to help protect our people, our data, and our clients, as well as running the security operations. So all of the things that go bump in the night, that rolls up through my team.
Got it. Awesome. We'd love to get your perspective on sort of, insider risks. I know that this is in a space that you and I have had a conversation about, and I'd love to just get your perspective as to how you think about insider risks from not only Avanade's perspective, but also, the customers and the clients that you have and how they think about it.
Yeah, I think as the industry has evolved and we've gotten better security tools for detecting and blocking external attackers, there's now starting to be a shift towards sort of those internal security risks, whether it's malicious intent or potentially accidental, right? Those risks are growing, and we need to find a way to find the needle in the haystack and pick out the suspicious behavior from the normal everyday operations that your business needs to run.
Got it. And as you think about you mentioned that it's growing. How has the technology evolved? I mean, you've been in the space for a while.
I think the technology, there's always, just another agent that you can deploy, which is one of those things that we're really excited about from the Microsoft perspective. Is we've already got the capabilities there, and it's just a matter of tying our different pieces together, figuring out what the policies are that we need.
Got it. When you say you've already got the pieces, you mean like you're already running Windows 10 and the agent's already embedded in the software or the OS, and you don't have to deploy another agent.
Right. No agent there, and for us, no additional integration steps with Office 365.
Oh, and so how is that benefiting y'all?
Well, if you think about older tools that you might have to use in this space, and if you really wanted to get telemetry from all those systems and have them tie together, you're talking about a massive integration effort. In this case, we didn't have to do that. Microsoft is helping pull the signal into one place, even to the point where we can reuse some of our policies from DLP or other to help inform the insider risk management and help us find those things easier.
Oh, nice. Well, I know one of the key areas that we're going to be talking about today is analytics, right? The ability to actually run a scan across your Microsoft 365 tenant logs and get a historical and even a daily view as to what sort of potential risks are possibly there. Greg, would love to get your perspective on, As you think about that particular feature, how is that beneficial for you?
Yeah, if you think about it, and we kind of talked about this a couple of times, it really is trying to find that needle in the haystack. It's really trying to find that behavior that's connected to several other behaviors, not just the one activity. And being able to go back and look at analytics across the different pieces of your environment to understand what's normal, what's not normal, and use that as a piece of evidence that you can then connect with other pieces of evidence and sequence through to pull the full story together.
Greg, you know, I spoke about this the other day. I think you framed it perfectly, which is around acceleration to action. So the less time we spend, or the less time you spend on configuring scripts, doing all this ingestion, doing all the, integration with different systems, deploying agents and managing all of that, the more time you have to focus in on the risks that are most important to you and accelerate to action, meaning I've identified a risk, now I want to take action and mitigate that.
Yeah, if I step back and look at the work that we've done as part of this insider risk program, as opposed to things that done before, we've really started with a structure in place, right? We didn't just get little building blocks that we had to assemble and worry about how are we going to operate and maintain this going forward. We've got some pretty good structure already there, and it's really about how does this structure fit our business? What are the things that we need to tune? How can we tailor it for us? Who do we get involved? What are their roles? And really getting to that business value as opposed to worrying about the IT infrastructure and setup and maintenance.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And the last thing I'll kind of mention here, and love for you to expand upon, you just said it just a minute ago, was around who do we need to involve? Who do we need to collaborate with within our organization? And I think that's such a key step that many organizations sometimes either, miss or don't pay too much attention to. And it's that step around, okay, I've got the technology in place to, identify these risks. Now I've identified it. Now, what is the next step in the process? And is that step, manual? Is it hard? Is it missing? How do I do that? And I think that's one of the key benefits that we're delivering from Insider Risk. And I'd love for you to talk about that.
Yeah, if we think about it, I think there's a whole life cycle, right? So as we start thinking about insider risk management and being able to use this as a catalyst to coordinate with the other departments within the organization that might be involved in responding to that risk, right? So our HR, legal, data privacy, IT security, the IT teams, and then last but not least, our change enablement team. Right? How do we socialize and get the education out there across the organization so that they understand why it's important, what their role is, who can see what, how can they contribute to making it a successful program? Because at the end of the day, honestly, it's not about the technology. It's about identifying and mitigating risks for your company. And for the individual, it's about understanding how it protects them and the company while respecting their individual rights to privacy.
Greg, thank you so much. That last point that you made was so important. Being transparent, with your employees and in your organization as to what is the value of what we're doing here? Why is it important? It's really about not only protecting, the sensitive information and the organization, but also supporting the employee and doing the right thing, right? And I think that's so important to highlight. And thank you so much for coming on to our session today. We really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for the partnership.
Awesome. So Talal, let's walk through a demo. This is great. We got a lot of great features this time around, and I'd love for you to show everybody what we have.
Yeah, let's do it. So I'm just going to frame this up really quickly. So I think the way we think about the set of innovations that we're releasing today are really centered around two key themes that we've heard about from customers like Avanade. One is make it easier, and the second is make it smarter. So with that, let's jump right into it. What are we doing to make it easier? So as we heard earlier from Greg, analytics was actually one of the core features that we're announcing this time around. And the inspiration for a feature like this actually came from Avanade and a few other design partners who said, hey, why can't you look at the entire sort of the space that we have in our tenant and help us understand those organizational risks? How big is the insider risk problem? Kind of dig into that a little bit, help us find some of those needles in the haystack, and really just at the end of the day, paint the picture of the insider risk profile. So I can start to get an idea of where I need to start, and what are some of the key parameters that I need to configure so that it's really tuned, my policies are tuned for what I see in my organization.
That's right.
So this is really, in summary, this is really about helping organizations understand their insider risk profile, really see the forest from the trees, and then with that, provide enough analytics and insight into it. So not only can they take action and find out the right policies they need to set up, but secondly, how they need to tune those policies that's very much relevant to the kinds of patterns that we see in that organization. So super excited about this feature.
Yeah, I'm definitely stoked to see more about this, because it is one of those things, you know, the question I get is like, well, where do I start? And I think this is the perfect place, because it is one of those things, you run the scan and you get to get a sense for, well, what might be happening? Where should I focus my policies? What kind of policies should I set up? And that, I think, is so key to quickly getting started.
Yes, and to kind of build on another point that Greg made earlier, which is that, you know, not only do customers like Avana don't have to worry about deploying new agents, but he also talked about not having to worry about do all this integration with workloads in Microsoft 365, for example, right?
Right.
So the fact that this is available, we can leverage that. Now, again, I do want to go back and stress the fact that privacy has been and will continue to be foundational to everything we build. And because of that reason, this is not something that's on. You still have to choose to turn it on, but it's frictionless. It's a simple toggle that you have to turn on, and then we do the work for you. Everything is aggregated and everything is anonymized. So you're really, truly seeing the organizational analytics. And from there, it's a simple click of the button. You go create a policy, opt in the users that you want, and you're off to the races.
Awesome.
The second thing, so kind of sticking to the same theme of making it easier. So two really exciting things that we're announcing here. One, as you and I, Ramani, we've talked about this over and over, and it's clearly the most used policy template that we have, which is the departing employee data theft, right? Yeah. But it requires you to set up an HR connector so you can feed in the data that we have. Now we're giving you the ability to set up a departing employee data theft where there's no connector at all. And the way we do that is with integration with Azure Active Directory. So we can look for termination date and use that as the trigger point to orchestrate if that user that left had any kind of indications that might indicate that they stole something. Now, I also want to call out with some of our customers that we talked to, they also highlighted a different aspect of this, this feature as well, which is that sometimes you have these scenarios that they call backdated terminations or walkout terminations. So as we know in some organizations, it's normal course of business that sometimes you have an employee that's going to a competitor, and because of that, they might not have the opportunity for a transition period. So it's sort of the minute they let you know, it's a walkout moment and things start to shut off at that point. So how do we go back and orchestrate on that? Well, we might not have a feed coming in from the HR connector, but now we will catch it. It's a catch-all for everything. So the Azure Active Directory feeds us that information, and we can orchestrate on the historical insights and tell you if we saw anything of interest.
Nice.
So very excited about this. And similar to this, same thing on the data leak side, right? So again, as Greg mentioned, they have a more sophisticated program in place. They can use DLP policies as a trigger point to start up a data leak orchestration where the DLP transaction brings this policy in place, and then we do all the heavy lifting of bringing all these diverse signals together and correlating them to see if there's some sort of risk. But now you don't need a data leak policy or a DLP policy anymore. You can use what we call native triggers. So if you check that box, what it does is looks for just any kind of anomalous activity or egregious activity that it sees in the environment and uses that to bring the user in scope that you've put in the policy to start to orchestrate and build things out. So again, I can't stress this enough. Now, imagine that sort of 1-2 punch, right? You come in, turn on your analytics with a single click, no agents to deploy, no data feed to set up. And within the day, you start to see analytics. And those analytics are refreshed on a daily basis for as long as you want. And with that, the second click is, I want to set up a policy, go click create a policy. You get recommendations on what you set up, and you can go that entire flow without having to worry about any kind of external dependencies. No DLP policy to set up, no HR connector to set up. All 1-2 click, and you're off to the races.
That is awesome, man. I love that.
A couple other things on the easy path as well that I want to call out. So this is a policy health check. So customers have also told us that, hey, this has actually come up from a few different design partners that we've had, including Avanade, which is that, hey, if something is happening, if we need to investigate a specific user, that's not the time to tell us that something wasn't working, right? For example, they weren't on the machine that we wanted them to be on, or whatever the reason might be. Or let's say the policy didn't have that user scoped in. So now we're giving you that sort of intelligence up front through what we call the policy health check. So you can get a confidence level that things are working correctly. So if you don't see certain indicators that you're expecting, you can be confident that it's not because something is broken, it's because the user is actually quiet. There isn't anything egregious happening that the system needs to raise for your attention. So that's part of this as well.
That's really good.
So that's sort of a summary of just what we're some of the features that we're announcing to make things easier as far as getting started, getting up and running, and that quicker time to value that you and Greg were talking about earlier. Make that time to value even shorter is what we want to do.
Yeah.
Now let's kind of shift gears a little bit, Raman, and talk about how we're making things smarter. Very, very excited about some of the stuff here. A couple of really key things that we're announcing here. First and foremost, MCAS integration. And so customers have told us over and over that, hey, what about stuff that's happening on third-party cloud? What's the kind of interactions that my employees are having over there? Is there some sort of malicious attempt for data infiltration or exfiltration or anomalous access that's happening? And we have a best of breed. We feel like one of the best of breed solutions in our CASB with MCAS. So why not integrate into that and bring that signal in? So that's number one. Another one I want to highlight here is some of the more nuanced ones around label downgrade. So we talk about, there's the typical scenario of somebody coming in and just doing a land grab of content and going out the door. But what about the sophisticated insider that's trying to cover their tracks, right? What we call obfuscation. Right. And one of the ways they might do that is they might downgrade the labels on the document. Now we can detect that now. So we can actually detect that as a signal and make that available to you, and also use that in our orchestration as well. Two other ones that I want to call out. Teams integration is also there. So we're getting, we've always had team integration. Now we're getting at the team message level and sharing files through messages, sharing teams with external guests and whatnot. Last, certainly not least, Raman, the thing that I'm personally most excited about is what we call the cumulative data exfiltration detection.
Nice. Sounds sophisticated, Tala.
It's as sophisticated as it gets, man. And I have been educated on this, and I still don't fully understand it. But guys much smarter than me on our research side call this the multivariate anomaly detection. Wow. What it actually does, and I do want to talk about this a little bit, because in layman terms, the way I like to talk about it is that, we talk about these sophisticated or these lazy insiders that might come in and do the convenience store, convenience store grab and go situation, right? They come in, grab everything off the shelf and try to run out the door. That's relatively easy to catch. But what about the sophisticated insiders that are kind of low and slow? Like their actions are very careful, they're very methodical, they're coming in and taking one document at a time, they're doing it over a longer period of time, they're using multiple channels of exfiltration, right? So as an example, let's say somebody comes in, takes a document one day, copies it to a USB device. Tomorrow they come in, take another document, print it, different exfiltration technique. The day after that, they come in, take another document and copy to personal cloud using a browser. Now, you're looking at least two dimensions there. There's a time dimension and there's a channel dimension, right? So what these data scientists, what these researchers have figured out is the ability to do this multivariate anomaly detection. So and those are just two dimensions. There's much more when you get into details of the time series or details of the actual content metadata itself. But being able to pool together all this multivariate information and do the analysis on it with the organizational usage as the backdrop. So it's not only if something weird is happening, but how weird is it compared to what normal looks like in your organization. So it's very sort of context specific to your organization. That's as much as I could talk about that I understand. There's a lot more funky stuff that happens behind the scenes, but super, super excited about this detection.
Awesome.
So building on top of that, so these are just some of the new insights that we're announcing. Another thing that I'm super excited about is this idea of sequencing, kind of in line with this cumulative data exfiltration, right? So we talked about in the past that, look, we can help you, we've talked about this for about a year now, right? So this idea of some departing employee and they take a bunch of content and then you get a signal from HR that tells you they're doing that and we can identify that, no big deal. But what about making it even easier for you to help identify those series of steps that they took, right? So let's say somebody actually downloads some documents off of a cloud storage. They then rename that file because they're trying to cover their tracks. And then they copy to a USB device and then they delete that file because they're trying to cover their tracks, right? Yeah. That's a sequence that took place. Yeah. Well, now with the sequencing capability, we can actually thread that needle for you. So we can track that file name, we can see that it's been renamed, it's been copied, and it's been deleted, and we can highlight that for you as a series of steps. So for example, you'll come into the screen, you'll see your scatter graph of all the different activities that we see, and all of a sudden I see on the top left-hand side there's a sequence that was detected. I can click into that sequence and it will actually open up and show me the steps that took place, the ones that I just talked about now. And I can also see that there is this visual connection that's made. And I love to talk about this as sort of building a constellation in the night sky, right? So one part of our job has always been to sort of build as many or clear the sort of the atmosphere as possible, clear out the clouds and get that beautiful view of the night sky so you can see all the different stars that you have. But really the next set of innovations that we're driving towards is how can we actually help you find the set of constellations that may indicate something of interest? And that's what this is building for you. So now that you see it, you can act on it. Here's the constellation that it identified. It's a 4-step sequence. It's telling you this is happening. And when you start looking at this in this way, you quickly realize that the sum is actually riskier, or the whole is actually riskier than the sum of the parts, right? So this is the intelligence that we're bringing in to insider risk management now.
And that's awesome. And that's actually even goes to our point earlier around the difference and the differentiation of insider risk to really identify these types of risks versus a solution like DLP, where you're just looking at one transaction. Okay, somebody downloaded some files. Now, if you were to try to do this with DLP, you'd have to take all of those different transactions and correlate them. And how do you do that effectively, right?
This applies to not just the cumulative data exfiltration, because it has to look at time series and it has to look at these multivariate sort of activities that are happening, sort of bridge that together. But in sequences as well, because you're not looking at just a transaction, you have to carefully curate a set of transactions and kind of thread the needle throughout that. So that's exactly it. I mean, DLP is not the focus area for something like this. And when you present this type of information, now you start to better understand sort of the motivations and the intent behind that insider risk actor, so you can more quickly make a determination on, is this something egregious enough that you need to go act on, or is this something benign? That's really the magic here.
Awesome, Tala. Thank you so much for attending this session. We appreciate you taking your time. Tala, myself, and Greg definitely had a great conversation today. And for you, take a look at these capabilities. If you already have E5, you can explore them within your, security and compliance center or the compliance center within Microsoft 365. If you don't have E5, you can go get a trial and you can start checking them out. Insider risk management and communication compliance is where I would start. And then, of course, as you think about risks across your organization and trying to meet different regulatory requirements, we have a great solution in Compliance Manager. So I definitely encourage you to check that out. Again, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.